Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Cries for justice rose from communities across the country as people came out in honor of Canada's missing and murdered Indigenous women for the annual Sisters in Spirit Vigil. The actions began early in Ottawa. Here's Annette Francis with more.
The morning began with a special delivery to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's mailing office. Pamela Hart made the trip from Toronto to drop off 4,000 cover pages of missing or murdered Indigenous women and girls. She says the momentum from the National Inquiry for Missing or Murdered Indigenous Women has fizzled out.
So we're here today to try and remind the government here in Ottawa that they have a responsibility, that there is a call to justice for each and every Canadian across Turtle Island.
And later those words were echoed across the lawn of Parliament Hill. Bridget Tolley is the organizer of today's event. After her mother's death, she founded the organization Families of Sisters in Spirit as an advocacy group for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
17 years. We've been on the Hill now, calling for change, calling for justice. 17 years later, we're still here calling for the same thing.
A few hundred people, including family members, senators, and MPs, gathered to share their support to families and listen to their calls for action. Among them was Megan Gallagher's family. She went missing 2 years ago in Saskatoon. Her dad, Brian, shared a poem called Megan, Where Are You?
I sent you a text. I say your phone is dead. Baby girl, where are you? People are asking about you.
With developments still fresh, he commended the families for their efforts to continue coming out.
But I just wanted to make a quick remark on your 17 years and what you've been doing is having an impact because the words are getting out there. And I would like to take a second to commend the Saskatoon Police Services and all that they've done, because as of on the weekend, human remains have been found for our daughter. And it's been because of their hard work. And I think if we're looking for models to start to build new relationships, they might be something that you could check out.
Megan's older sister, Lindsay Bishop, is walking across Canada to bring awareness to the issue. She began in Victoria last February and plans to be in Newfoundland by December.
Any type of visibility is important to keep people talking and to keep the word out there to, how do I say this, to help stop the atrocities that are happening across Turtle Island to our missing and murdered.
Grandparents, please. We need your help. Please take care of our baby girl. Merci. Thank you.
The families are hopeful to see more action by next year's annual event. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Families in British Columbia used the day to draw attention to what they call police mishandling of their loved ones' cases. As APTN Sarah Connors reports, families and their supporters want better accountability from police when it comes to cases of missing and murdered.
September 29th would have been Tatiana Harris's 21st birthday. But on May 3rd, the 20-year-old Cree and Métis woman was reported missing. Her body was discovered the day before on May 2nd on this yacht in Richmond. But her identity wasn't confirmed as the woman on the yacht until 3 months later.
The police handling of Tatiana's case came with many flaws.
That's why her mother, Natasha Harrison, and other families are speaking out.
The list of neglect continues. The communication with law enforcement and to the family and the community has come to a halt.
In honor of Sisters in Spirit, Amnesty International Canada held a virtual press conference for families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Family members shared their experience of police negligence and mismanagement in the investigations of their loved ones. Brenda Wilson's 16-year-old sister Ramona Wilson disappeared in 1994 in Smithers. Her body was found by the Smithers Airport in 1995. Wilson says she's frustrated more hasn't been done.
And when are we going to have answers? When is there going to be accountability?
The Union of British Columbia Indian Chiefs says more services and supports are needed for family members, as well as a change in policing.
We don't need police apathy. We need police taking more action and taking these cases more seriously.
In a statement to APTN, BC RCMP said it was committed to solving the cases, stating, "We are learning from our past mistakes and are working hard to overcome historical interactions that have left prolonged feelings of being dismissed." The Vancouver Police Department gave a statement defending its investigations, saying in part that provincial policing standards dictate how police agencies conduct missing persons investigations, and it consistently solves more than 99% of missing persons cases. As for Natasha Harrison, she hopes by raising awareness, police will take cases like her daughter's more seriously.
Uphold the law, and I hope we can reach a point in our justice system where cases like these get solved instead of brushed under the rug because one person decides a human being doesn't deserve a proper investigation.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News.
And the message is loud and clear across the Northwest Territories this October 4th. Indigenous women and girls, gender diverse, two-spirit and transgender people deserve safety and equality. It's an emotional day in Denendeh as families, elders, advocates, leaders and police officers honor MMIWG2S. But it's also a time of hope and healing as participants offer prayers and march from Dilo to downtown Yellowknife. The day-long programming also included families who have lost loved ones, a candlelight vigil, and a survivor sharing circle and feast. The goal is to continue pressing the territorial government to take actions to reduce the rates of violence against Indigenous people.
I think it's important that I march for them because, I want to support them any way I can. And this way it brings awareness to these type of things. There's a lot of violence towards Aboriginal people, especially towards Aboriginal women and two-spirited. So that's what I'm here to do.
In other news, Francois Legault has been elected for a second term in a landslide victory, and a candidate in his party has made history. The first Indigenous woman elected to Quebec's National Assembly. Sacheen was on the scene when Kateri Champagne-Jourdain's victory was announced.
Je ne sais pas à quel point vous êtes conscient que ce soir, on a marqué l'histoire.
Kateri Champagne-Jourdain is the first ever Indigenous woman to be elected to Quebec's National Assembly. A newcomer to politics, she ran for Quebec's Coalition Avenir Québec Party, or CAQ.
Mais les choses vont changer pour moi, puis les choses, je l'espère, vont changer aussi grandement pour notre région.
An Innu from Uashat Makmaniutanam, she is now a CAQ MNA for the Duplessis riding. She said she joined the CAQ because they prioritize economic development, and she said she plans to rely on her Innu culture to work with Indigenous peoples on major projects.
Pour moi, la CAQ, c'est un parti qui est pragmatique, c'est un parti d'action, c'est un parti qui livre la marchandise. C'est important pour moi parce que ce que je veux voir arriver aussi, c'est des actions à tous les niveaux, dans tous les dossiers. C'est pour ça que j'ai décidé d'y aller avec la CAQ.
The Legault government has had a few controversies with Indigenous people, from refusing to acknowledge systemic racism, to passing a controversial language bill, to fighting the Indigenous Child Protection Bill in court.
Pour moi, ce qui est important pour voir les choses changer, ce sont les actions. On a eu beaucoup de commissions, qui ont des rapports qui ont été tablettés. Ce qu'on veut faire avec la CAQ, c'est prendre ces recommandations-là. Le travail est déjà commencé et déployer les actions pour que les choses changent enfin.
She also reiterated that the CAQ was working on an Indigenous language protection bill, and that Joyce's principle was in the works, despite Legault's refusal to acknowledge systemic racism. Champagne-Jourdain succeeds Parti québécoise Lorraine Richard. The CAQ party won 90 of the National Assembly seats, or 70%, with 41% of the popular vote. The Quebec Liberals came in second, forming the official opposition with 22 seats. A report by Sacheen and Emilia Fournier, APTN National News, Sept-Îles, Quebec.
Senate committee examined the effects of the legalization of marijuana on Indigenous communities on Tuesday. The Trudeau government legalized cannabis in October 2018, and last month the Liberals announced the review of the Cannabis Act, including its effects on Indigenous communities. Witnesses were asked whether legalization has had a positive or negative impact. PPKIS's Cree Nation councillor Colin Stonechild had this to say.
It's gotten better for our community, and even within my own family, I know we've used cannabis products to help curb that edge of addictions and drugs. I think economically we've created a lot of jobs, and it's benefited our people, and it's brought a level of safety to our community.
Still to come, more reflections on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Stick around. Welcome back. Well, it's the first year, September 30th. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is considered a national day of remembrance for communities in the Northwest Territories. Survivors and intergenerational survivors want to ensure their truths aren't limited to one day. Our reporter Charlotte Mort-Jacobs has that story.
There was only standing room left this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Crowds gathered in Nilo, a small Yellowknives Dene community, to honor survivors and intergenerational survivors in a truth-telling event.
Those people that survived, that came home, are the ones sharing their stories.
Children were stolen from their homes and made to attend the some 14 residential schools in the Northwest Territories. A not-so-distant memory in Yellowknife with the Cacho Hall, the last school to close in 1996.
Anger replaced it all. I don't remember that first year in residential schools. I don't talk about it much because I don't remember much. I remember the crying. There's a whole bunch of us, maybe 20, 30 in junior boys. Every night, somebody would start crying, and pretty soon we're all sniffling.
Elder Paul Andrew is a survivor who spent years in Grolier Hall in Inuvik. He shares his story of forgiveness he learned from a Holocaust survivor.
We were so angry coming out of residential schools that nobody knew what to do with us. And the Holocaust survivor was able to tell me that story. First time, I think it was in my 50s, somebody was able to identify that anger.
Intergenerational survivor Cindy Chase shared her uplifting message of taking her power back by taking responsibility for her life.
I take 100% responsibility for all my experiences. And I need to do this because if I don't, I'm going to start blaming my mother, my father, residential school.
She's a wellness worker with the Yellowknives Dene First Nation and says communities must stop oppression by tackling unresolved trauma and codependencies.
And in this codependency, we were doing the wrong things in our lives, and she never once corrected us because she thought that was love. Codependency. We become enablers.
While National Day for Truth and Reconciliation comes to a close, Case reminds everyone they're not alone.
Put some good energy in why we have this day, to remember those children that never came home.
And it takes a community to heal. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Dillon.
Andrew Carrier is a survivor of day school in Manitoba and is the Manitoba Métis Federation's Minister for Residential and Day Schools. He spoke with our Daryl Stranger to share some of his thoughts about the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation.
So Andrew, I want to thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day today and speaking with us about this special day.
Well, thank you. Well, as you know, September 30th is our second annual Day of Reconciliation, where we have time to reflect on all of the children, Indigenous children, which of course are First Nation, Inuit and Métis children that were basically taken out of their home communities and put into residential schools so far away from their hometown. And to think of these children in the light that they were removed from the love of the family, and it's really important to reflect that these children went to a cold place where they were given rules and regulations. They lost their culture, and they were really strict, and so they weren't allowed to speak our native languages, our Michif language, or First Nation language, or Inuit language. And so this is a day where you think of the children that were taken away from their homes, from their mom and dad, from their grandparents and cousins and so on, and that they were forced into an institution of brick and mortar with no love. And some of the events that we heard that took place, a lot of these children were physically, verbally, as well as emotionally and sexually abused. And so when you think about all that, it's really a day of reflection.
And I know you yourself are a survivor of day school, is that correct?
That's correct. So
what does this day mean to you?
Well, you know, that inner child was lost that day. You know, when I was 7 years old, the time of the event, if you wish, where I was sexually abused by a priest. It was a time where I lost my innocence, and from that day forward, it has really impacted me emotionally, spiritually, and how do we move from there. So it's taken a long road of healing, and I think that September 30th is a day of healing as well.
And how will you be celebrating September 30th yourself?
Well, I've been invited to a ceremony in Ottawa on September 30th, so I'll be there among other survivors. And it's amazing how many survivors are either a year or two older than I am, or a year or two younger than I am, but we are certainly a close-knit community as survivors go. And I'll be saying special prayer on September 30th for the children that went missing and are still missing today.
Well, I want to thank you for taking a few minutes to talk about the day and share a little bit about your own experience. And I'll leave it there. It's starting to rain, so we can get out of the rain a little bit. But
well,
thank you again.
It's a blessing. Thank you.
Just days after an official apology, Sacheen Littlefeather has passed away. More on that coming up after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. This from the beautiful region of Hazelton, British Columbia. How about that sunset? Sheridan Martin sent in this amazing photo that makes you want to curl up in a blanket with a good book. Thanks, Sheridan. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be featured as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 14 with showers in Halifax, cloudy 17 for Fredericton. 5 with rain in Kuujjuaq, 9 in Nain. 20 in Montreal, 21 with showers in Val-d'Or. Sunny and 21 in Sault Ste. Marie, 19 under the sun in North Bay. Showers in 20 in Thunder Bay, 18 for Sioux Lookout. 6 with a chance of snow in Churchill, sunny and 16 in God's Lake. 16 in Winnipeg, 14 with showers in Dauphin. 22 in Regina, sunny and 23 for Saskatoon. 11 with rain in Meadow Lake, 6 in La Ronge. 12 in High Level, 9 for Fort McMurray. 22 in Edmonton, sunny and 20 for Lethbridge. 20 in Vancouver and Victoria. 16 with rain in Prince George, showers and 20 in Smithers. +2 in Old Crow, rain and 15 in Whitehorse. +5 in Yellowknife, 10 for Norman Wells. -2 with snow in Sax Harbor, 4 above in Pawlatuck. -1 and snow for Chesterfield, snow and 0 for Arviat. -5 with snow in Resolute, 3 below and snow in Igloolik. Sacheen Littlefeather, a Native American actress and activist, passed away on the weekend at the age of 75. She died of metastasized breast cancer Sunday while surrounded by family in her home in Novato, California. Littlefeather participated in the occupation of the former Alcatraz prison in San Francisco by the United Bay Indian Council in 1970, and she refused the Academy Award for Best Actor on behalf of Marlon Brando during the 1973 Oscars. She was the first Indigenous woman to ever set foot on the stage when she read a statement calling for better representation of Indigenous peoples in film and television, something she was blacklisted for. Sacheen Littlefeather finally received an apology from the Academy just a few weeks ago, roughly 50 years after the fact. This week marks the return of APTN's current affairs shows. New episodes of APTN Investigates, Nation to Nation, In Focus, and Face to Face will all debut this week, starting tonight with Face to Face. Our guest to kick off the 9th season of the show is Saskatoon Tribal Council Chief Mark Arcand. Arcand recently lost his sister and nephew in the mass stabbings on the James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan. Arcand says his sister should be remembered as a hero.
She died saving her family. She couldn't save her oldest boy, but you know, to have a woman stand up to grown men in a brutal attack like that is it's heroism. And people need to look at violence against Indigenous women from Indigenous people. We've got to call that the truth, and we've got to really address that issue because there's women and children that died here.
You can catch that episode of Face to Face in less than 2 minutes' time. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For much more, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and be sure to tune in live here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the season premiere of In Focus. They'll be talking with some of the best Indigenous chefs in the country. Should be delicious. And stick around now as the season premiere of Face to Face is up next. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.